Welcome back to Cooking with Bill. It's been a while. Just got back from a trip from Germany, and so it has made me want to very quickly do a ApfelStrudel. Now, if you've never had an ApfelStrudel, you may have had a pastry, breakfast pastry that has like a phyllo dough and it has apples wrapped inside. You've had apple pie, of course. Well, what this is this is a very thin dough. It doesn't have any yeast in it, so it's not going to rise. And it's going to be pounded out very, very thin. We're going to put some apples in it, cinnamon, sugar, a bunch of good stuff, wrap it up, bake it, and I'll show you how to do all this next. Now, the first thing that you're going to have to do is you're going to have to take apples. Now, the type of apple depends on what you want the flavor to be. I like to have a little bit of tartness, so I use a Granny Smith, which are the green apples. And then I'll also use a honeycrisp, which is a reddish gold apple. It's kind of a mixture between a Golden Delicious and a Granny Smith. Now, I'm going to show you how to chop them up. You're going to take them and peel them completely, and then you're going to chop them up very thin slices like a julienne. And once we're done with that, we'll put them in a bowl and set them aside. Okay, so here we've got the bowl of apples, and as you saw me chopping these up, they're just very uniform, thin sliced apples. I'm going to put them in water, set them over to the side until we're ready for them. Now we're going to do the dough. Now the dough is very simple. I'm actually doing a double recipe for this, and so you can have this if you don't want to have as much as we're doing, but we're having friends over. To make this, we're going to use a stand mixer. Now you could use just a regular hand mixer, whatever you're doing, but this actually has 3 cups of all-purpose flour. So if you're doing a half a recipe, you're just going to do a cup and a half. Takes per recipe a quarter of a teaspoon of salt. We're going to take a half teaspoon because that's doubling it. We're going to just quickly blend that together. Now because this is a pie dough, okay, basically what we're making, but we don't want it to be flaky. We want it to be the texture that has a little bit of a chew to it, okay? So, you could have used phyllo dough, you could have used regular pie dough, you can do different things, but we're going to do this the way it's intended. So we're going to take 4 tablespoons of vegetable oil, and we're going to start blending that in very slowly. Again, you could use canola, any vegetable oil that you want. The next thing we're going to put in is 2/3 of a cup of warm water. And again, we're going to incorporate this slowly. The last thing we're going to put in is 1 teaspoon of apple cider vinegar. Now the reason we do that, it's actually going to help promote the binding of the flour. It's going to slow it down from the gluten getting too stretchy, because we don't want this to bounce back. So when we roll this out, we want it to have not a lot of give to it. Now once it starts getting to a point that everything is starting to bind together and making a ball of dough, we're going to change over to the dough hook. And again, if you don't have one of these, you just make do with a paddle and then do dough like you'd normally do. If you find that your dough is not coming together quite right yet, you can always add about a teaspoon of water at a time, and it'll eventually start to bind together and make a ball of dough. We're going to take a very light flouring to your surface and make sure your surface is clean. Take that ball of dough out, and we're going to knead this. Now, kneading is a process where you're trying to activate some of the gluten. You're also helping, again, to incorporate all of the ingredients together, the salt, the flour, the oils. But it's mainly to get all the fibers and the dough to have the right texture. Now, when you're doing certain type of doughs, you want to be careful doing this, that you don't overwork the dough, becomes tough and chewy to eat. But in this case, we're going to do this for about 3 minutes, and then we'll come back and I'll show you the rest of this process. Okay, once you've done this for about 3 minutes, 3 minutes, should start seeing a sheen on the dough. Now we're going to put just a little bit of oil in this bowl. We're going to flip this over once just to get it coated, and then we're going to cover this with plastic wrap, and we're going to set it aside for 90 minutes. Okay, so we've waited about an hour. We wanted to let that gluten fully incorporate in the dough. We want to be able to have some elasticity so we can stretch this out really, really thinly. Now, what I've got here is I've taken just a regular kitchen towel, clean of course, and I'm putting just a little bit of flour on it, and this will help us be able to manipulate the dough when it comes time. Now I've separated this dough into 2 balls, and you need to have some ability for this dough to have some stretch to it. And basically what you do is you're going to take this like you do a pizza dough or a pie dough, and you're going to start rolling it from the center out. And if it's rested enough, it should be able to move with you and retain the shape that you're giving it. Now I've done this before without using the cloth. I'm trying it this time just to see how it works, because I've been shown that if you can do it this way, it does make it much easier when it comes time to do the final bit. But we're going to take this and we're going to keep rolling it out. Now you're going to get it to a point where you really can't roll it anymore. And you'll have to do kind of like they do when you see old pizza commercials and stuff where they're trying to flip the dough up in the air. I guess if you could do that, it would work. But we're trying to get this dough almost paper thin because we want to be able to have it have a nice texture to it. And so we're just rolling this out. And then you're going to get to a point that you're going to want to start to stretch it. Now you're going to stretch it just by using the backs of your hands. And you're not really using your fingers. You're not You're not gripping it with your fingers. You're just pulling it slightly with the backs of your hands. And you'll just keep doing this until it gets thinner and thinner. And then at some point, you'll have it so thin you could actually see the pattern of the cloth that we have under here. So I'm going to keep doing this for a bit. And I'm just going to keep stretching it. And then eventually, I'll show you what it looks like. Now that our dough is just about ready, we're going to take a saucepan, put a little bit of water in it, put some raisins in it, let them plump up a bit, and then we're going to add those to the apples that we've diced up, and we're going to put some sugar and some cinnamon there as well. So let me get that ready. Okay, so as you can see, we've taken this dough, we have made it into a nice rectangle. Now we're going to take a little bit of butter, just melted butter, and put it on this dough. Now you could use your vegetable oil. And again, all this is calling for vegetable oil. You don't want to use a strong olive oil. You don't want that strong olive oil flavor in this strudel. If you were doing a strudel that was with meat or vegetables, that'd be a different thing. But we want this to be for apples. Now, we put down a layer of butter on here. The next thing we're going to put down, believe it or not, is panko. This is breadcrumbs. And we're putting down about 2/3 of a cup. And what this is going to do is this is going to allow the juices of the apples to be absorbed into this breadcrumbs and protect it from being too wet. Okay, so we have the raisins plumping in the water. We've taken a cup of sugar, just granulated sugar, and a teaspoon full of cinnamon, and we're going to just mix that into all the apples that we have cut up here. Now remember, you can choose whatever type of apple you like. We're using Granny Smith's and we're using the honeycrisp, and I thin slice them and then third those slices, so you end up with chunks like this. Okay, the final part to this mixture were the raisins. Put in around a cup or so, maybe a little more of raisins if you like raisins. If you don't like raisins, don't add them. I happen to like them. Here is our pie filling. Now what you can do is you can take this and you can spread it pretty much around the entire piece of dough. Some people actually like to have it just in one line. It's up to you how you happen to like your strudel and how you like it rolled, or whether you just like it folded. Okay. But I'm leaving a little bit on the sides here so we have some things to seal. So, okay, so we're going to fold this over on the end. Fold this over on the end. And now we'll start to roll this. Again, this towel comes in very handy because it allows you to keep everything together as you do this. As we are done, there's your strudel. Okay, we're going to transfer this to a pan. And again, we're going to use the towel to kind of help us here. And there is our first strudel. Take a little bit more butter. We'll put this in a 375-degree oven for about 25 to 30 minutes, and it'll come out and be ready to eat. A number of things you can do with the strudel once it's baked. You can put ice cream on it, vanilla ice cream. You can just put some powdered sugar on it. But the way we like to have it is more traditional, which is a vanilla cream sauce. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take about a cup and a half, and again, you can use a liquid measuring cup, or you can be like me. I'm just using a regular cup because it's all eyeballing here. But we're going to take and put about a cup and a half of whole milk. You could substitute half and half with half and half, or with heavy whipping cream. And then you take and put a tablespoon of cornstarch in with 2 tablespoons of that milk as well. So you're making a slurry. Now what we're going to do at this point is we're going to take the milk and we're going to add in a pinch of salt. And with that, we're going to put in about a half a cup of sugar. And we're going to start to get that up to a boil. The second part of this is we're going to take 4 egg yolks. Now we're going to separate the eggs. If you haven't done it before, I'll show you how to do one. But basically you crack the egg in half and separate a yolk to the whites. And we're going to temper those yolks with the milk mixture so you don't have scrambled eggs. And it'll make a wonderful vanilla sauce. So let me get this on the stove and get it started. I know some people get kind of nervous about salt. They're always worried about having too much salt in their diet. Honestly, when you're baking and cooking, a little bit of salt adds flavor. Now, if you've never separated an egg, they're pretty simple. Take an egg, you can crack it on the side of a bowl, separate it into eggshells. Just putting it between the shells, all the whites have gone in there, and the egg yolk is now in the bottom of this shell. There you go. Now, as we get this up to temperature, we're going to add this slurry of the cornstarch. That'll help thicken everything. We already have the pinch of salt in there. We're going to add some vanilla to this at the last. We're not going to put it in now. We'll put that at the very end. And then we'll be ready for this to come together as a vanilla sauce. So there we put our slurry in. That'll start thickening that up when it's in a boil. We've got about 1/3 cup of sugar. I misspoke on the amount of sugar. And what we're going to do is we're going to temper these eggs. So we have the 4 eggs in here. We're going to put just a little bit of the milk. And now we've added the rest of the milk mixture in to the eggs since they have come up to speed. And now we're going to stir this for a bit. I am going to add about a teaspoon of vanilla. And what you're going to end up with is a beautiful color. And it's going to thicken up and make a very nice vanilla sauce. So our strudel's been in the oven for about a half hour, maybe 40 minutes. Again, it depends on how hot your oven is, how large your strudel is. But we're going to go ahead and cut into this. Now we've let it set for a few minutes. You're going to cut into it. Hear that crunch? And look at that. That is absolutely delicious. Now, the way that you would serve this, put it on a plate. And that vanilla sauce that we just made, drizzle that around it. We're going to get a fork and try this. Now there's part of me that wants this film not to work, so I have to do this all again. But you want that flaky pastry. If you look at that, just broke off. This is going to be hot. But for you, I'll do it. Wow, that's really, really good. The different kinds of apples, raisins if you like them, that vanilla sauce just kind of puts it over the top. But if you're looking for something different to be able to do and give it a real German flair, having an ApfelStrudel, you can't beat it. So that's about it for Cooking with Bill. If you haven't already done so, go ahead and subscribe and hit the bell so that you know when we're doing new videos. On Facebook, like us, share it to your friends, family, neighbors. We always like to see you coming back and watching the shows. We'd like to have any kind of suggestions as well. So if you have things you'd like us to cook, please do. If you notice when I'm doing the large productions, I actually have an interpreter up here. That is me, but we do that for our friends that are deaf and hard of hearing. And it also helps hearing people that are trying to learn a little bit of sign language. So from my kitchen to yours, we'll see you back here in the kitchen.